Joanna, for that very spirited and eye-opening presentation on the state of the lower classes in the country. And hopefully that has provoked thoughts and ideas you'd like to share for the next part of our discussion, which is the Q&A session. Can I invite Alkan and Mary to take the seats in front here? And yeah, we're looking forward to hear your thoughts on the many layers of inequality that we've seen from the different presenters. There's a microphone at the back, but if you feel that you can speak loudly enough for everybody to hear, you can just speak from your seat. So yeah, we'll go with the show of hands. Who wants to start? Yes, sir.
Go ahead. My question is directed to Dr. Lee. I'm quite impressed with your presentation, honestly, because it really struck me. Now, with the slides that you showed, what I can gather is that the issue of economic inequality is actually a universal issue. From US, Malaysia, UK, Europe, whatever it is. And I think the only country without economic inequality is North Korea. So, and what you gave just now is that this economic inequality has got two dimensions, economic and market dimension. The other one is social and political dimension. And somehow in your presentation, you said that if we try to temper and adjust this economic inequality, it would affect productivity, wealth generation, so on and so forth. Now, so that brings me to the idea of economic inequality. I think in any sort of government or economic management, there will still be the issue of economic inequality. So the challenge is this economic inequality, how great is the, what you call difference is between the have and the have not. And therefore, while we try to reduce this what you call diversity or difference, it will be quite a difficult task to actually reduce it. Would it be more appropriate for any country in their economic program to increase the size of the cake rather than focus on the share of the cake? And in your opinion, our government, the current government today, after 50 over years of ruling this country, have they successfully, in your opinion, grow that cake to a bigger size, to something which is more, what shall I say, palatable to the electorates and citizens?
We'll hear from a few more members of the audience, so that we can get a range of questions for everybody else. Yes.
Hi. I've got some questions. Dr. Lee, you alluded to policies like distributing cash non-productively to households as something that's essentially bad. So my question would be, how do you balance between policies which promote equitable distribution while avoiding, naked populism? And I see this sadly on both sides of the political divide. I think it's something that's quite dangerous, and I'd like to comment on that. Secondly, colleague from Senate Bangsa Malaysia, I'm curious if you can share with us examples of specific policies and programs that you had in mind for this SIA to implement, because the idea sounds interesting, but what exactly do you have in mind in terms of specific things to be done? Not an exhaustive list, just some examples will be illuminating. And finally, for Mary, your slide at the end gives the sort of implicit assumption, I think this is shared across the board to some extent, that government is the problem as well as the solution to inequality. I'm just wondering whether this is, truly correct as an implicit assumption, and I'm wondering also whether, in your mind, whether there are actual things that local communities and societies can do to tackle inequality rather than just depend on government programs to solve it. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for actually highlighting the third speaker and the existence of refugees and asylum seekers. Thank you very much indeed. I also want to take the point of the lack of up-to-date factual data, which is absolutely crucial in capturing the situation and framing solutions, absolutely. I'd like to actually direct my question to members of the academia, Dr. Lee and Mary. What do you think is the role of academia to be primary data gatherers and to indeed date the information if the reliability of data from government sources is so suspect, especially in the last 2 years? Thanks.
I'll go one more, we can squeeze the first round. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm interested to delve deeper in terms of the young workers' predicament. Perhaps the low growth of their EPF funds is also tied to the larger role of debt that is growing as well. I want to hear from the panel whether perhaps the government's trajectory for economic plans like greater financialization. These days we hear a lot of sukuk, all these Islamic bonds, and it's like wealth creation but through debt. So what is the basis for our economic growth model? But particularly its impact on the 20s and 30s who we know are suffering in terms of property ownership and as well as the level of debts that they are expected to be. I think it's interesting that Jaya brought up the point about drug pushers who peddle substances in poor communities, but I have this debate with some friends. Can you say the banking and financial industry are like drug pushers? Because people are forced by necessity to take debt and they also rip off big amounts of profits. So what do you all think? Is the greater financialization the way forward for the country? Or, that's my question.
Thank you. Let's start with Mary.
Let me take the easiest one first, the role of academia. I think there's a lot more that academics in Malaysia can do. Many academics are involved in a particular kind of career development which focuses on publication research for their personal upward mobility with very little benefit to the public at large. So some of them do very inconspicuous kind of research which really has very little benefit for the general population or for the society at large. Published in some journals which nobody reads, you know. It's also the environment in the universities. For me, when I left, it was because I wanted to do research on minimum wage because I really didn't trust a lot of the information that I got from government statistics, and I wanted to do, my own kind of field work. I got some funding to do it from the unions, but the university management said that this is not an important issue. And they said this will only benefit the unions. So they looked at it that way. But minimum wage is such an important issue, such a crucial issue, which the workers have been asking for the last 20-25 years. But the university management didn't think that that was important enough. So sometimes it depends on the university management, whether they allow certain kinds of research to be done. It also depends on whether the academics can get funding. What kind of research is funded by whom, right? And so certain kinds of research, it's easy to get funding, and certain kinds you can't get funding. So academics face problems. Those who really want to do, the significant kind of research do face problems. But I think there are a small group of people in academia who are doing good work in terms of doing field work and getting information. Is the government the solution or the problem? Well, the government can be the solution. It's expected to be the solution, but it does not necessarily happen that way. Government is supposed to look after the welfare of everyone, but it has a particular duty towards the vulnerable. That's my view. Right? there should be a certain conception of the common good and working for the common good. It should not be based on political expediency. That means just to stay in power, doing things just to stay in power. Is the government more engrossed with staying in power, doing everything possible to stay in power, or is it doing what is for the common good? And government alone is not going to do it, and this is where you need the involvement of citizens. There should be a bottom-up approach. Even World Bank is talking about when you do research on poverty, let the poor define poverty, not the experts in the World Bank define what's poverty. So there needs to be more grassroots involvement, and this is where I was talking about voice, about the marginalized and the weak, being able to be involved in policy making. We always presume, government presumes that they know what's best and how to handle the solution, how to handle the problem. But they are not in the shoes of that particular group of people that they are supposed to develop the policy for, right? So, can they come up with a solution that solves the problem? So it requires the involvement of individual, of the different groups involved, but very often these vulnerable groups do not have the opportunity at all. They are not given the opportunity at all to be involved in decision making.
Okay, thank you very much for your questions. I was outlining the views that are out there, and just for us to think about. And one of them is the view that if you pursue more equity, then you will suffer in terms of efficiency. So if you try, basically, redistributive policies will compromise economic performance and economic growth. There are no simple answers to this kind of issue. And anyone that gets too simplistic about it to say that it always happens, I think would be, it's just being very stubborn and polemical and ideological. But I think there is a certain tension. I acknowledge that there's a certain tension, and distributive policies. There's no guarantee that they will also spur economic moments. But it is not necessarily the other way either. It's not guaranteed that if you have policies that you distribute, that it necessarily will lead to economic downfall. And so I was pointing out examples of different countries. Some that have experienced fast growth, inequality decline. Fast growth, inequality increase. Right? Fast growth, slow growth, inequality increases. Slow growth, inequality decreases. Okay, so there's such a diversity here. I think the question is, what are our objectives, and what would be the better way, the higher road? And so I am inclined in my bias that we should strive for the policies which have been done, and countries have achieved both the economic growth, and here I'm not talking about breakneck speed. I think that era is over, but just steady, sustainable growth, while also pursuing equitable distribution. I think I want to illustrate. You asked, these are very big and very important, very big issues that would be very hard to answer briefly. But I think maybe to illustrate a little bit, because you talk about whether Malaysia's achievements can be considered as sufficient. Malaysia has been one of the fastest growing countries and sustained over many decades. So it's not something we cannot deny that, and the kind of standard of living we have benefited from that. But were the things that we did already necessary? There was a theme in my presentation. I will stick to it about the labor regime, and whether or not. So consistent with the theory that you need to have a more repressive labor regime. You have to put down, unions, because unions will, with unions, they will, there goes your productivity. Everything will shut down, right? That's an extreme, but that's a certain view. And I think we are inclined, throughout Malaysia's history, have been tilting in that direction. Was that really, necessary? For instance, to attract foreign direct investment, do we need to be, have that hostility towards unionization? Investment can be, is attractive for various things, for your infrastructure, for the growth potential. So I think we when we did not need to have gone that far. On top of that, we are now in this situation of a country in this middle income trap, where we have such a dependence, right, on contract labor and what I was talking about, situation that is so hard for technological progress, right? And so we're really stuck in a very deep kind of mire here. We have examples of countries where it's a more cooperative kind of in the industrial relations, and workers are organized, high rate, but that is not, but they're actually more involved in the process of technological change and increasing productivity. So that's the kind of alternative I think that is better and is trying to strive for both, the productive outcomes as well as more equitable distribution. I think the social transfers, as a principle, it needs to have a purpose. Well, of course, not just having a purpose, because just giving out 500 also has a purpose. But in a more systemic way. I mean, if you really think that 3,000 means you're poor, and that 500 is going to help you, then why is it like just ad hoc one-off, right? So that is showing that there is, a political purpose, but without really a framework for it to, operate. So things like we don't have insurance, unemployment insurance. If you're unemployed, there's a purpose there. There's a reason for certain people to receive assistance, and that can be conditional as well. That would be far more acceptable. Conditional, I think, or transfers to families with children who are going to school, because that is to provide for some longer-term benefit and for children's schooling. So I think that's a clear way to distinguish between the naked populism and programs, more justifiable social assistance programs. I think I have more to add to Mary's point about the role of academia. But I'm not questioning the household income survey. We don't have access to it, so for me to really question its validity. Actually, I was trying to say that we should not dismiss it just because we do not like this, the fact that it is showing slight decline. Okay, and of course the main point is that our inequality remains high. But we need to go further. We need to supplement by looking at other things like housing and so on. I think that is an outcome of the slow lagging earnings growth. So it is really interrelated, and thanks for bringing that up. You were kind of implying the causality the other way, that
Let's just comment something on the whether sometimes debt is a good thing. I've been reminded to say like debt can be productive, but if it's if you look maybe through your studies, young people, what is the indebtedness levels? Because if it's the rich getting more debt, because some people say that is good for growing the economy, but I just want to know how it's actually shared across the board. And of course, there are some people making money off that economy. So again, there's also the dimension of transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich through legal means, such as banking.
Yeah. I think, those are mostly the comments and you've, enriched our conversation here. But you related that to the APF. I think it is an outcome. Taking on more debt clearly if you are earning less. But you also added that there is also it's not just it is also being pushed and so that is another problem. There were slides that I took out which would have illustrated a little bit the issue of financialization, how some of the main areas of growth in credit over the last decade have been in credit cards, in property, in purchase of cars, and the credit to manufacturing has really just tapered off. I mean, it's stayed the same. It's just sort of stopped growing in real terms.
In part, in terms of, I know you directly represent Dr. Lee, but talking about economic inequality, the government's premise has always been growth with equity. That means you grow an expanding economy and you distribute equity. So if you ask me whether the government has done a good job, I would say no, because you top 20%, 10% of households are having 33% of the income share. We don't know about that. And the bottom 10% are only having 2%. I don't think it's a good job done. That's my view. In terms of, I'll tie the two together about social transfer and specific programs under SIC, the young man in the, is that the Slam motion? Okay, National University. Yeah, I'm the Merdeka tournament type, so I can't recognize the university. Basically, we do not have any specific programs listed, but we have what we call policy trust based on target groups, which is the poor and low income households in terms of capability building, vulnerable groups, which is people who can't work or live independently, and that's where I think the social transfer should happen directly, because there will be any society ending between 5 to 8% of people who can't really, and it's our society's responsibility to take care of them. So that is direct. The third component, of course, deals with refugees and migrant workers, and I think the onus is also on us as part of the global community, and the fact that we use them in our economy to take care of their lives in terms of advocacy and so forth. But one key point is the approach we are advocating here is it has to be constituency based and customized at that level within that constituency, because you need to do few steps like the social inclusion mapping to understand who really requires. So what is good for a place like Gua Musang may not be good for somebody in Taman Medan. That's our point. It is location specific and it requires much more research and data gathering. Finally, Kiaming's question about the banks. Actually, Kiaming, there's already, if anybody is interested, I know your larger question is that the capitalist system is working, it is not. We all know that.
Sorry, because you did all field research of communities, people talk about the poor. We don't know, are they also in this trap in debt as well? So,
oh yeah, I can tell you, if someone is interested, Uncle Aziz used to talk about the Sarong index. Today you can talk about the Along index.
yeah, you see,
So do it. Somebody who is really into this, go and do it, because you will find very interesting numbers in terms of that. Because these communities, they live from day to day. I mean, a guy, he has got 11 children, and he's got $900 a month income as a security guard. And now the minimum wage will be slightly higher. And you expect him not to go to the Along? Hey, come on, man, somebody in this club blows $900 over lunch. Let's get serious here, huh? Okay. So this is the state of affairs down there. And if you don't want to know, you have to go to the ground. And I'm very sorry to say this. I know I have two academics with me, and I know Hokai and Mary may be the type of gone to the ground, but many academics in this country don't go to the ground. And they don't do a lot of things staring in your face, things which they need to do. And we have, sorry to say, they dare call themselves academics to come out and give a pro-government slant to every damn thing in the mainstream papers is rubbish. You are insulting all the good people who came from MU and UKM in the 60s and 70s. And you want to compare to people like Wong Lang Wu and Uko Aziz and all, you are not even there. Okay? This country used to have a proud tradition of universities that were ranked. And if you are talking, I mean, don't even use the word academic if you are not qualified. So what I'm saying is, there are problems out there. If they really want to do research, they can do. Thank you.
Thank you again, Jayana, for that honest, straight talk. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think what it looks like is the problems that we are talking about today, especially inequalities, are more symptoms of more systemic.
Use the mic. Yeah.
I'm quite inclined to conclude that from the discussion today that inequality is a systemic outcome of an economic system that we and many other countries are implementing. I mean, you are seeing this in the US. They talk about the 1% versus 99%, the uprising, the Occupy Wall Street, and so on. Now, the solutions and angles that we are talking about, is that, are these band-aids or are they really core solutions that could actually overcome the inequalities? I mean, SI is a good effort, right? But like you said just now, the wage in Malaysia is one of the lowest. It's about 28% of the GDP, right? The wage bill. That is not, doesn't look that it's going to change. I think the ETP numbers are also worrying because the NEA wages, right, are actually showing 21% of their gross GNI, right? So in other words, it will be the non-NEA businesses, right, that will actually push up the average up, not the ETP projects. So by the way, we have been in the level in the region of about 28% wage to GDP, right, for a long time. More advanced countries, OECD countries, they are in the region of about 50 to 60%. In other words, labor are getting higher paid, right? Corporate profits are lower, right? Now, that is a system. That is a system. I mean, even if capitalist system like the OECD countries are giving more wages to their workers, we are, what brand of capitalism are we? And how are we going to address it? Now, this goes to the question. We have now two political fronts, the ruling BN and the PR. Would we be seeing, I wonder if there would be any comment from, if there are some PR reps here, right? What would be the economic philosophy of PR? Right? Would be different, substantively different from what BN is implementing, which is basically free market capitalism, if I can call that. Is more biased to big businesses, right? Subsidies which are in a way transfers, right? Benefited by bigger companies. Like you take electricity, sugar. Most of the items which are subsidized by the government, I think electricity and gas are the biggest subsidies. These are actually benefited by big companies. And I know of a company who have been here in Malaysia for the last 15, 20 years, we are a foreign company, who enjoyed the cheap gas and cheap electricity, employs have never paid tax and getting extension on their tax holidays, right? Making hundreds of millions, right? Never paid tax, employing only 300 people. Now these are the kinds of FDIs, and I think in the E&E sector it's the worst, right? Now these are the kind of investment that we are getting, right? I do not know how this benefit the country. And looking at the numbers again, right? There are serious review that we have to do, right? Especially by people who have the potential to vote. To look at these numbers. Are we going to change our system, or are we just going to have empty slogans? It will be empty slogans versus empty slogans. You know what I mean?
More questions? We'll go with that for now. Maybe we'll get into the audience again to get an answer to the gentleman's question.
Well, I'm not an economic expert, but from the little that I've read, I would agree with you that systemic inequality, systemic reasons account for some of the inequality. But it's not just systemic. I think it's also other factors. Like, for example, as I said, not having access to opportunities, people do not have voice, attitudes of people and so on. But definitely we need to have structural reforms. And we cannot run away from the free market. But we do not have to allow the free market to determine everything. And this is where the government comes in. Because the government can impose certain kinds of controls on the free market, because the free market is not perfect. I think during Mahathir's time as Prime Minister, for a long time, he was talking about the benefits of the free market and espousing free market mechanisms and privatization and so on. But over the years, we've seen that you cannot leave everything to the market. And this is where the government has to intervene. What we see in Malaysia also, a lot of companies depending on low wages to generate profits. That means their profitability is dependent on low wages rather than on innovation. So these are some of the areas where we need to have structural reforms. Whether through the tax rates, taxation system, introducing minimum wage, a lot of things can be done within the capitalist system that we have in Malaysia. I don't know whether we can move away from capitalism as such, but I think we can have a more humane kind of capitalism, which does not look at just what the employer wants, what the investor wants, but also what the employee wants. A marriage between profits and flexibility that the employer wants, and security, better quality of life that the employee wants. I think it's possible. And if you look at, I mean, I'm not very well versed in this, but there are some countries where employers have worked with the unions. I think Germany is a good example, where they have worked with the unions to bring about better level of quality of life, welfare for the workers, while at the same time promoting productivity and increasing incomes and so on. So it's not impossible. It's being done in some Latin American countries as well. But we, in Malaysia, I just feel that enough thought is not put into it by the government. I feel that the government does not really focus on things that matter most to the ordinary Malaysian, to the ordinary worker. And the government is more interested in what the more powerful groups want, the foreign investors, the higher income groups. I think they are controlled by this because government also is an employer, basically. So there is a lot that can be done, and I think we have enough experts in Malaysia to bring about those changes.
When we talk about symptoms and cause, usually what we have in mind is there's one cause, one root, and many symptoms. I think there are many roots, and while we can, it is helpful to be mindful that we are addressing root and not symptoms. It's also, I don't think it will be fruitful to then look for one solution, as though there is one root. And I think various interventions can take place that are systemic, if appropriate. But we don't need one. And we haven't really looked at, talk much about sectoral differences, for instance. This would call for, I think, if we really want to have a national, all-national project about redressing inequality and agriculture, there has to be a big powwow and talk about that. And so just pointing out, one area that we haven't been talking about, and not one that I know very much about, so I cannot say very much or have any much ideas, especially at the systemic level. I've talked about some, I think, that can that need to be talked about at a high level, in a very open, critical, and constructive, coherent way about, I think, our industry and how it operates. So I would consider these as addressing systemic issues and trying to get to the root as well. But there are many roots, in the same way that there are. And so if you have 5 roots, then maybe you have 20 symptoms, right? So, but I think that's thank you for pointing that out, because I think we can. I think especially looking at where in searching for data and indicators to capture the problem, that we end up addressing symptoms and other roots.
Thank you. You want a direct answer to the, and everyone is willing to speak, anyway, you want a direct answer to whether both sides of the divide are offering us any hope of an economic development philosophy? No. Because I have not seen anything yet articulated that they are going to address the causes and not the symptoms, that they are going to address the issues of inequality. We have not seen. Maybe the next debate should be organized by call both sides and say, let's have a debate like they do it in the US, and this is what the economy, and let's let the people know what they want. Because honestly, I have not seen. Yeah, there is the Bukujinga, there is the ETP, GTP, YOP, and all that, but you don't get anything about in which direction we are going. So, and everybody knows that it is all still run by a very neoliberal kind of philosophy. So it's not going to address these issues. So I really feel that we need to talk about, do we, the people, want to install a government that will be pro-rakyat? Okay? I really don't care whether it's whichever coalition, but it has to be pro-rakyat. But we have to take that decision that our responsibility doesn't end with voting on election day. All of us. The 10 million who's going to turn up to vote. We've got to take that position because we have to be the check and balance, whoever is in control of it. Constantly reminding them that you are not on the right track. And for that to happen, it has to be a whole mindset change in the electorate, in the way we look at our country, and what we want for the future. Thank you.
Right, we have more time for questions. We have a gentleman in the back. and then jump with the snow cap, yeah, and then we come back.
I'm coming from a group of NGOs that we are speaking to a state government now. They are looking at inflation getting worse in 2014, and we are looking at increasing food productions. And we are speaking to Kota Raja MP now to look at how to help the poor to get jobs, because there are few thousands poor families down there, they need jobs. So we are going in there last week, and we are going in this week again.
Where is it? Where is it again?
In Kota Raja,
Kota Raja?
Taman Sentosa track. So these are the areas that Singaporean governments are looking at now to increase food production. And the area that Malaysia requires is agriculture, like Dr. Lee was mentioning. You see, Malaysia is one of the largest oil palm plantations. How come we are not recycling our old oil palm trees? Why? In a lot of developed countries, their natural resources are well developed. Why aren't our old palm oil trees recycled? Look at rubber woods. It's a 17 billion industry, rubber woods. White palm oil trees, which is we fell about 20 million trees a year, and we are not recycling it. Why? So it's a big industry. Right? There are 60 countries in the world that plant palm oil trees, and we are not doing that.
Thank you.
That's right.
Hello.
Can I talk without the mic?
Yeah.
Okay. My question, well, it's not really a question, it's seeking further clarification in terms of humane capitalism. What does that actually really mean? Can capitalism be humane? Because in the free market, the existence of the free market is for one purpose and one purpose only: is to deliver profits to the shareholders, and most of the time by any means necessary. So in that kind of system, can capitalism be humane? One. And to further expand on that, with regards to PPPs, you have governments partnering with the private sector to create growth, economic growth. Now, in that kind of situation, debt is socialized because the government's investment, infrastructure, etc., comes from public funds. So debt is socialized. If the project fails, the debt is socialized, but the profit isn't really. How can capitalism be humane?
Somehow or other, one get the feeling that our economy is stuck in a labor-intensive environment, and the way it is managed now is that the labor must be as cheap as possible to maximize the profits. Now, I believe years back, people have said that we should move up the value chain. In other words, we move up towards a knowledge-based economy. Now, if we follow that path, I'm sure we need to make investments in education. But then, education itself has got lots of polemics. Even I also get scared to discuss education. But have we really looked into this, what you call knowledge-based economy, to upgrade our labor force to be more knowledgeable, more skillful? And the other thing is, when we do this, it must not be at the expense of the other labor group, which is the one with the vocational skills. We should also need to emphasize and invest more on these vocational skills. And I believe a country like Germany, they move up the knowledge-based economy, and they also move up the vocational path as well. And they complement each other. That's why they are the largest economy in Europe. So in Malaysia, somehow or other, we need to be what you call very passionate about these things. And I see the people, even the citizens of the country, are a bit more confused, on this issue. So I leave it to panel, especially Dr. Lee, to comment on this one.
Thank you. This is the last round of Q&A, so the last chance to ask or comment to the panelists. So feel free to take this opportunity. Okay, if not, we shall just move on to the panelists' answers to the last three questions and concluding remarks as well.
Well, like I said, the devil is in the details, and I'm not one of the experts who will work with the devil. But humane capitalism will mean looking at I don't know whether you can call it a compromise, but rather at fair engagement between what the capitalist wants, right, in the form of the investor, the employer, and what the employee wants. It has been, there are many different ways of doing it, right? For example, introducing minimum wage. I would look at it as one of the ways to introduce humane capitalism. So we are not letting the market decide what is the wage rate. If we let the market decide, it's going to be 600 ringgit. But the government comes in and says, no, we're going to have a minimum wage of 1,200 or 1,500 ringgit. It will mean that, because usually in Malaysia, research has shown that many companies make profits because they capitalize on these low wages. Not because they cannot pay higher wages, but because they pay low wages and they get a higher profit, they don't want to innovate. Right? For example, introduction of machinery or spending money on skills training for their employees, higher skill levels for their employees. So they cut down on expenditure on those things, right? They pay very low wages to maintain a higher profit margin. So there are different ways of doing it. Minimum wage is one of the ways in which you can introduce humane capitalism. Universal benefits for certain kinds of contingencies, for example, unemployment. Again, this is something which the workers have been asking for years. Right? It comes up every time. Just before the elections, the government talks about it. After the elections, they forget about it. And this is what I call political will, which is determined by political expediency. Right? Because there are many people who are unemployed, not because they don't want to work, right? Because of reasons beyond their control, they have lost their job. And they need to be given some kind of security. So a marriage between what the employer wants and what the employee wants. Right? The employee wants security and better quality of life. The employer wants profits, flexibility to make decisions to hire and fire and so on. So this is where you need government coming in with the right kind of laws, with the right kind of policies, and not leaving it to the invisible hand of the market to decide, because the market is not perfect, right? And we need, it requires, I suppose it requires that we take a certain kind of ethical stand on the issue. It does require that we take an ethical stand on the issue. It is not something that is value-free in that sense, right? It is value-based. And I think there are examples of countries which have attempted or gone down this road. It is a marriage between capitalism and socialism, right? Some aspects of capitalism and the positive aspects of capitalism and the positive aspects of socialism. I don't know whether this is what Pakatan Rakyat means by their welfareist model.
Yes. I think I'll just address the question about how being stuck in labor intensive and I guess these are all issues surrounding the middle income trap, so-called. Well, it is a huge conversation that we can have about that. I did mention that education would play a role, increasingly not just access to education, which has grown tremendously, but also the quality of education. And I also wish not to go into polemics on that, but I agree, it's essential to the issue of inequality. Education educational attainment is one of the most decisive factors in earnings and then subsequently, in your accumulation over time, and in the positive sense of intergenerational transmission, right, of productive capabilities. I think maybe a bit more concretely, there needs to be a little bit of both the push and pull, or if you want, carrot and stick. Minimum wage and wage-based are some because you have to being stuck in a system where you're paying as low as possible. I'm sure there are, and I know of some employers who took a higher road, who said, I will do it differently, I'll venture differently, I will not go with just paying as low as possible, but pay better for that to get a more quality workforce. Right? But they're sticking their necks on the chopping block, and they take certain risks, while everybody else is still in that 500, 600 level. It takes that kind of legal intervention to say that no, you cannot. But you cannot complain that your competitors are paying lower, because everybody has to pay at the minimum, right? And it's a regulation, but it's minimum. It's only regulating the minimum. We need a lot more, and I think there should be more discussion on on work conditions more generally. For instance, if we have a 48-hour full-time work is defined as 48 hours. The international norm is 40 hours. One of the implications of that is that over time it kicks in after only 48 hours. And if you look at data about the length of the work intensity, how many hours workers are being made to work, it's very high. So even with minimum wage, as long as it's still a system that is very favorable towards working very intensively, not just in terms of using workers instead of machines, but working them many hours, then I think we still will not break out of the rut that we are in. I mentioned things like contract labor. I think it's worth shifting towards that kind of international norm where 40 is the full time, and that means that the hourly wage, we're focusing on hourly wage and shifting that upward, so that things like part-time work then also become more welcome, right? Then we have Malaysians and youth and others who might actually think about engaging in part-time work. In addition to that, I think incentives call for support for mechanization. So these are just general points and just the beginning of our conversation.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate the gentleman in his NGO for doing this work in Kota Raja. I'm sure you will have more stories to talk about how people are struggling there. But basically, since 1980s, we have been talking about food security in all our plans. And then we keep changing the benchmark. At one time, it was self-sufficiency in rice supposed to be 80%, is dropped to 65 now. And everywhere you will find it in every plan. Food security is paramount and all that, but then we won't allocate enough resources for taking care of that, and still depend on import. So I don't know, perhaps that's one area we should ask the coalition to come up with a clear policy, because if there's really a crisis, I think we are going to be in trouble. We'll be depending on Thailand and Philippines to send us back so nice. Yeah. The point about the moving up the value chain and the knowledge-based economy, if you care to, you go and check the third outline perspective plan, 2001 to 2010. There's a whole chapter written on that, on how Malaysia was going to move up to the knowledge-based economy. 13 years already, we are still moving, because there is no will to address the real issue about the poor quality of education in this country. And I would dare say it's poor. And we keep getting stuck in the Anglophile system, Anglo-centric system, which led given to us by some colonial power. We don't look at other good alternative models. The Scandinavian model of education, especially Finland, is very good because they are able to address a lot of these issues we are talking about today. In terms of the systems they have, I think we should start looking outside the whole, God save the Queen mentality. Finally, I don't know, I think you did say we can sum up that. Okay, I just want 2 points. I think, look friends, this is 21st century. Okay? We cannot keep talking about the 18th, 19th and 20th century mindset about everything being seen in ethnic terms. Let's move on and say we are human beings. If we are poor, we help whoever it is. I really don't care. It's time for all of us to grow up. All of us, including me. Okay? And I think we need to start taking responsibility as rakyat who have elected the government. We expect the government to deliver. We stop them whenever they don't deliver. And we also have this additional responsibility of taking care of those people who don't even know they have rights because they are not educated. We have to advocate for them. So, last but not least, I have to give you this because SADF, our final message is this. This is my home, I care, I want to make it better. So I hope you will subscribe to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Panelists, Dr. Leo Khan and Zainab from SADM.